Welcome to the Successfully Unemployed podcast. I'm your host, Roger Wesley, and today we have a special treat. Today we have a former trial lawyer, arbitrator, and mediator with over 2 decades of courtroom experience. She has mastered the art of persuasion, influence, and commanding a room under pressure. Now, as a high-stakes communication expert and strategist, she equips leaders, experts, and entrepreneurs with the frameworks and strategies to communicate with clarity, confidence, and credibility. She's a top public speaking voice on LinkedIn. She's been honored as a two-time winner of the Most Inclusive HR Influencer Award and the second place winner of the Women Changing the World Entrepreneur of the Year Award. On top of that, she's a TEDx speaker. Please help me welcome Kelly Charles Collins. Thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing today, Kelly?
Thanks, Roger. I am wonderful, and I'm so happy to be here. I can't wait for our conversation.
I tell you what, I'm fired up. I have not seen an introduction like that in years. What have you not done, Kelly? Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get here?
It's funny. So I practiced law for this year, actually in September, will be 30 years since I was licensed as an attorney. And, many people have this idea like, oh, I want to be an attorney. I never had that idea. I actually went to law school on a whim. So I went to college at the age of 16 to study fashion. And at 20, I got pregnant with my son. And I was trying to figure out, like, what did I want to do? Because I was still a young person. And, what did I want to do? And I realized that it wasn't going to be necessarily in the fashion realm. And it was right before I got pregnant, right before I was starting my MBA program. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he said from high school, and he was talking about what he was doing, and he said he was going to go to law school. And I was like, oh, I could do that. Because at the time, I used to work at a trust company. So I went to school in Rhode Island, and I was working at a trust company that was next to the courthouse. And when I was bored around lunch, I would go over to the courthouse and I would watch. And I just loved like the pomp and the circumstance of the law. And when he said that, I was just like, oh, I could do that. And so I declared to my family that I was going to go to law school. But the catch was that I was going to graduate with my master's degree in November. We know school starts when August, September. And so I had to find law schools that would let me enter in January. There were two. One in, I think it was Minnesota or somewhere really, really cold. And I was already living in Providence, Rhode Island. And the other was in San Francisco, California. And so I wasn't going to Minnesota. So I just decided I'm going to apply to one law school. I applied and I got in. And the rest, as they say, is history. And I have really, taken the art of being a trial lawyer and leveraged that in so many different ways. As I was an arbitrator, a mediator, I've been an educator in law school, high school, college, everywhere, basically. And now as a full-time entrepreneur, as a keynote speaker. So, and I've done other things in the past. But people always say, what haven't you done? I've done a lot of things, but it's all comes back to like communication. Everything that I've done has to do with some form of communicating with people, influencing people, persuading people.
Wow, Kelly, I love that. And I just have to say, when you said that it's almost been 30 years, I was like, you must have started college at like 10 years old or something. Then you said you started at 16. I was like, that makes more sense because I'm telling you, like, you don't even look like you're old enough to have been around for that long. And as a trial attorney, you just look so youthful, so energetic. Tell me, where do you get this energy? How do you get this excitement to continue to carry on and to push forward? Where does that come from?
My mom raised me to just believe that I could do anything. So I was born in Jamaica. I moved to the United States when I was 9. And I've just been raised around people who, believe that they can be anything. My mom's 85. My dad's 91. They're both still alive, thank God. My dad and I share the same birthday. We just celebrated our birthday. So I'm 55. So
Wow. Wow.
right? So I'm 55 years old. But it's all about like, I'm always trying to figure out what brings me joy and keep myself in those spaces, right? To stay away from the drama of it all, to really just be peaceful. And my goal, and I know this is my purpose, right? My purpose in life is to be the light for others to stand in their greatness. And so I am always trying to figure out, how do I affirm and amplify and elevate other people? And if I want to do that, I can't be like the, Debbie Downer. And it doesn't mean that I don't have days, because I do. There's many days that I sit in this pretty office crying, right? Because entrepreneurship is hard. But when, I love speaking. I love communicating with other people. I love helping people shift. I love to see when that light bulb goes off. And so that's the thing. Those are the things that keep me going, right? So yeah,
Wow.
you just gotta do what you do.
Wow, I really love what you shared there because you shared that there are times when you sit in that office and you cry because entrepreneurship is hard. And can you just walk us through what that journey was like for you, going from this highly successful lawyer to going into the entrepreneurship world and taking that leap of faith? What did that look like?
It looked like long hours and hard work. So I tell people that the reason I decided to go into full-time entrepreneurship, I had been a trial lawyer ever since I started practicing law in 1995. So I started as a public defender. And then I went into employment law, so representing companies, global companies all over with their employee issues. It's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of long hours. And at some point, I was just like, there could be more. There must be more than this. And in the last couple of years that I was practicing, I started practicing some personal injury, which I don't love. And we'd have to take depositions of expert witnesses. And I remember sitting in a deposition and I was taking the deposition of an expert witness. And one of the questions that we ask is how much money they've made from being an expert witness, right? So we can use it against them. And we were sitting in Tampa in this high-rise building downtown. I mean, the views were spectacular. This man who is a doctor, a medical doctor, owned this floor, right, of this this building. And he said, he's told us, like I asked, I think in the last 3 years, he'd made millions, millions. And I was sitting there like, this man is making millions off of what he knows, not what he does, what he knows, right? So we're hiring him to look at medical records, or the plaintiff is hiring him to look at medical records to assess and to give his opinion, right? Based on his education, based on his expertise. And he's paid thousands of dollars an hour, right, to do this. And then over time, millions. And I was like, oh, you're in the wrong business. You are in the wrong business. And it happened multiple times. And I started just thinking, these people are basically cash flowing what they know, right? They are cash flowing what they know. And how can I do that? And so I started thinking about how can I take all the things that I have done, right? And as a lawyer and all the other things we just talked about, and leverage that in a way that I could use my voice. And the other thing that personally had happened is that my son had been victimized by the police. And it's something that I really wanted to talk about. And I really wanted to be able to use my voice in a space that I was not restricted, right? And so as a lawyer, we have lots of rules and there's things we have to say and can't say. And so I started looking at entrepreneurship. I started looking at speaking. So the end of 2017, I made a list. And on that list, it said that I was going to deliver a keynote, deliver a TEDx, write my first book, and I was going to become a professional speaker, duh. And so I made that list, and then I just diligently worked for that list. And in the 11 months after that, so 2018, by November of 2018, I had written my first book. I had gotten my first paid, so outside of my salary, paid speaking engagement. And I had delivered my TEDx, which is now an award-winning TEDx. So it was lots of long nights, right? So trying cases during the day, being in court during the day, and then at night just staying up to really build my business and build my brand.
Wow. You just shared so many gold nuggets in that last soundbite that which direction do I go? But yeah, I think something that's glaring that I would love it if we could unpack a little bit. Coming from the background of being an attorney, of representing people in the courtroom and going through all these different processes of law, what was that like having your son go through that experience? And how did you cope with that with your profession being so similar to what you were dealing with in your personal life?
Yeah, it was horrible, right? It was horrible from the actual incident itself, right? Even just how things started to how it eventually ended. Thankfully, it ended sort of okay. It was horrible, right? But what it did in that moment, it actually became the part of the background and the foundation for my TEDx. So I talk about it in my TEDx, and I talk about the idea of bystander intervention because in that moment, my son was essentially saved by a bystander, right? A woman who had, had nothing to win, nothing to gain, and everything to lose from standing up for him, right? And being a voice when she was being, verbally attacked and all the things. And so that made me really want to be able to talk about things like that outside of the confines of law. And because I know as an employment lawyer, I represented companies and I would see, what would happen with employees and, people saying stuff or not saying stuff and people standing up or not standing up. Those things I wanted to be able to talk about outside of the four corners of the documents, right? And the trial rules that we had. And so for me, this was a way for me to I always say this, to leverage my profession to pursue my purpose, right? So to take all of those skills, all the things that I know, right? And all the things that I knew, and instead of the things that I do as a trial lawyer, take those things and make a difference in the world. I'm always thinking about legacy, right? One of my favorite poems is The Dash, and it talks about like, that the time between when you're born and when you die and what people are going to say about you, right? When you leave this earth. And so I'm always thinking about that. And that's what really started to come up for me. How do I talk about the humanity of people? How do I ensure that my son doesn't become the next hashtag? So that's how it all started. And so it started, with the TEDx on bystander intervention, then me teaching around unconscious bias, and now moving into high stakes communication because it's all about communication.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I can't imagine how you must have felt going through that situation. And, being from Louisiana, there are a lot of things that happen in the South that don't make it to the news. And it's amazing that you went through that with class and with dignity. And there was a success story that came out of that. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Now, I would love it if we could unpack a little bit of some of the things that you've done in your background. I mean, you just hit the ball running. And you said 2018, you said the end of 2017, you said you were going to be a TEDx speaker, write a book, and then deliver a keynote, right?
Yep.
How in the world did you get that done on top of all of the trial prep and all of the things that you had to do as an attorney? What did that process look like for you? You was just a
Yeah.
woman on a mission.
Yeah, I was on a mission to get out of that practice. It took a lot of planning. So I always say that I am a master of reverse engineering. If I put my mind to something, if I know the end, if I know where I'm going, I know how to get there. And so I wrote this list and I started thinking, okay, let's start with the book. So I started with the book. That was the easiest because I had already trained, I had been training for years and years and years on how to conduct workplace investigations. That's what I did as part of my role. And I would do presentations and people always had questions. And I was like, well, why don't I just write a book about workplace investigations? So I took my PowerPoint presentation and I started that and I used that as the outline for the book. And then I would just write the book in pieces. So not like, oh, chapter one to, I would just write whatever was on my mind that day. I would write about that. I then hired an editor to help me really flesh out the book because what I wrote originally was like this. And then the editor was like, yeah, no, you need to really flesh this book out. So I worked with an editor to really help me develop the book. And then I wrote the book. When you say, like, if you start to talk about something, all of a sudden it shows up. I had never really seen things about TEDx. I don't even know why I thought I was going to do a TEDx. But then one night there was on Facebook, I saw this ad for this woman who said she was a TEDx coach and she was doing this. She was going to do like a webinar or something. And I was like, okay, I'm going to jump on there and I'll just see. So I'm on here with her. Now she's in Japan, right? So this is late at night. It's only supposed to be like an hour. She's on there for hours and I cannot get off. Like, I want to go to bed, but I cannot get off. There's something about this woman. And I'm just like, no, I just need to stay on here with her. So eventually I hired her to be my TEDx coach. And we applied and she was phenomenal. And, I actually got first time accepted to two TEDx stages, but they were too close together. So I decided not to do both of them. And so we worked. So I would, and during the time I was working with her, I was trying cases. And as a trial lawyer, we're in trials, 10 hours a day. And when you're done, you're not done because you got to prepare for the next day. But I would then come home and like I said, she's in Japan, so totally different time zone. And I would stay on with her for hours. and work through my TEDx. And what was interesting, so as a lawyer, I already know how to speak. As an educator, I know how to speak. A TEDx is totally different. So one thing she had to teach me was to shift out of that kind of training mode and shift the way that I spoke, right, in order to deliver this TEDx. And I'll tell you this, the day that I delivered my TEDx, which actually got elevated to the TED platform, when I delivered my TEDx, I was sick as a dog. I was so sick that morning. I won't tell you, it's coming up and out everywhere. And the night before, I don't know how I got sick. And I just prayed to God. And I said, because it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was supposed to be at the stage at 9. I had not even taken a shower. And I just said to God, God, please give me 15 good minutes. I said, if you give me 15 good minutes, I can do this, because she had prepared me so well, right? And I had done the work. And I said, if you just give me 15 good minutes, I can get through this. And I did. I eventually got through it. And, the thing is, Roger, you have to I always talk about this thing called the backwards alphabet, right? I call it the backwards alphabet. Desire, commitment, right? Belief and action. There are things that we desire to do. So I had this desire, right? I had these things written down, but I had to also be committed, right? That I was going to do these things, and I was going to do it in the time frame that I had set forth for myself. I had to believe that I could do it. Right? I had to believe that, yeah, you can do a TEDx, you can write a book, and you can, get your first paid speaking engagement. But the most important part, the part where people generally fall off, is the action, right? I had to do the things, right? So I had to stay up late at night with her on the phone. I had to write this book, and I had to go and get an editor, and I had to think about who was going to, right? I had to hire somebody to do the cover, and I had to figure out, how do I get this format? I had never written a book. I didn't know none of this stuff. I published my first book. So I'm like, let me publish it. But I had to learn, right? And I had to do the things, right? For that TEDx, I had to do the things to be a professional speaker. I joined an association of speakers to learn about the business of speaking. And so I think that's the process that people don't really think about. Like, you see my books behind me, right? But you're like, oh, she wrote a book, but there's a lot of stuff, right? She's an award-winning TEDx speaker. Oh, but there was a lot of work, right, to do those things. And I think that's the place where people fall off, is in that action. I know that was long, but
No, that was beautiful and eloquent. I can see why you are a high stakes communications expert, because you just gave it all to us in just 2 minutes flat. That was excellent. So, I know this is going to sound like a random question, but are you
No.
an expert witness? Because
No, I would listen. I should have been. I should have been. And it's so funny, because people will say, well, why did you just find out about that? But see, in employment law, we don't have expert witnesses like hired guns, right? So when we're doing employment cases and people are suing over discrimination, all that stuff, we don't have those types of witnesses. But in personal injury, we do have those types of witnesses. And the other thing that I noticed, that it was men, and it was white men. I think in all the time that I did those personal injury cases, I saw like just a few women, right? I think there were two. I think there were two expert witnesses who were women. And I remember having a conversation with one of them about, like, oh, I'm really excited because, I have an expert witness who's a woman. And that also drove me. And it also drives what I do now with women, because what I know is that women are brilliant, and that we don't get our just due. And so part of my mission is to ensure that women's value is not erased. And so working with them to really understand how to leverage their voice, how to leverage their expertise, how to, as I say, cash flow what you know, right? Because it's not always about the doing.
Absolutely. Wow, I love that. Cash flow what you know. Can I
Yes,
borrow
it's a
that? Are you
tagline for
okay?
my new podcast.
Again, I tell you what, we need to be listening to this podcast. We're going to get to that in just a little bit, but I tell you what, I love that. I love that hashtag now, Kelly, we met, last month. We had this absolutely amazing experience out in Florida, and I got to connect with you on a one-on-one basis. We had the opportunity to listen to a lady who was sharing her expertise, and she was really sharp in her line of focus. And my question for you is, how do you see the value in someone that's trying to make the transition from being employed to becoming successfully unemployed, how do you see the value of a coach or a mentor playing into that? And what do you think? Do you think that that's something that people should really pursue?
Oh, absolutely. So in all, as you listen, you see there's always been somebody who's supporting me, right? One of the first coaches I had when I started and I was writing my book, she was so important to this journey because I wanted, so when I came out, I wanted to have like, oh, I want to have a moniker and I want to have this and I want to do all these things, right? Because you see everybody out there doing these things. And I also wanted to kind of switch from being like known as the lawyer to being, this entrepreneur. Two women, my sister and my coach Libby at the time, were the grounding forces for me in saying, do not leave that behind. Take that with you. Right. And it's been the best advice. And that's something that I want, women and anyone who's transitioning, take it with you because what happens is we sometimes think we're just going into this new space, but you're not. Like you're new, right? People always say you're new. You're not new. You're new to the space, but you're not new because you have all of this. Those people, right? So my sister, who's like my coach all the time, and Libby really were instrumental in helping me to think about who do I really want to be in this space? How do I want to show up? How do I want to be perceived? What is the impact that I want to create and who do I want to create that impact for? Since then, right, and like I said, my sister's constantly here. I've had other coaches. I've hired other coaches. Some have been wonderful, some not so much, but there's always something to learn from it. And what I learned is that for me as a strategist and a mentor, what are the things that I liked? What are the things that I didn't like? What are the things that I will not do, right, to my clients and for my clients? And what are things that I don't like to do, right? Because there's so many things that I know. There's so many things that I know how to do. And I had to, and I still have to, because I'm a visionary, I'm a real creative person. I have to keep thinking, like, you know how to do that, but should you? And so when you have coaches, when you have mentors, when you have people around you who care about you, I have a friend who is like always in my ear and she's always telling me, Kelly, we are high level, not eye level.
I like
Right.
that.
And so when you always need to have people around you, some of them you have to pay, right? Some of them you're gonna, and some of you have to pay a pretty penny. And some people will just be pouring into you, but you should always have people around you who see the vision, understand the vision, and will support you and not just be like yes people to you,
Mm.
right? And oh, you're so wonderful. No, you're not doing that mess today. Like my sister be like, no, you're not creating another thing.
She sounds like a great sister.
Yeah, she is.
Wow. So I heard so many gold nuggets here because I think the thing that is so valuable in what you just said is that not only did you go and get formal education and graduate education, you also went and got educated by people who had industry experience and coached you through these other areas outside of your formal and graduate education. And there's so much value to that. I heard this said recently. It says that formal education will get you wages, but self-education will get you profits. And you
Oh,
took the self-educate. When I heard it, I was blown away too. I said, I need to get another book right now
right.
because it's so amazing what you said, because here we have this trial attorney that's still going out and still procuring coaches. And that leads me into, and I've been chopping at the bit because you and I, we met in person, we had a great conversation in person, and we spoke a little bit before the podcast. So I'm trying to peel back the layers slowly, but I'm getting too excited. Kelly, so tell us, what are you doing right now? What are you most excited about in this part of your journey with what you're working on at the moment?
I'm really excited about my podcast that I'm getting ready to launch and being grounded in who I am and what I'm really, really good at. Right. I've been doing, a lot of things and trying to figure out like what really brings me joy. And to your point of peeling back the layers, one of the things that I took some time to do, like the end of last year and even into the beginning of this year, is to peel back those layers and see like what is it? What is it that really, really brings you joy? And for me, the thing that brings me joy and that lights me up is talking about speaking and talking
Mm.
about communication and helping people. I say, take what's like in that brilliant brain of yours and creating intellectual masterpieces. Right. And so one of the things that I do is work with mostly women, to help them, women experts, to really get them to take all of that, what's in their brain that they want to create an impact in the world, and put that into a signature talk or presentation that allows them to create the impact that they want to create, right? To increase their income and actually back to cash flow what they know, right?
Mm.
Because we have so much going on, and I know that there's so many people like me. So I work with people like me. I love people like me, crazy, left brain, right brained, right? And just all over the place. So I really love that. And one of the things that I was doing, so, talking about entrepreneurship being hard and just a lot of work and people not telling you the behind the scenes. We spent a lot of time during the pandemic watching everybody tell us, like, you got to do this and you got to, post on social media a million times a day, and you got to, like, everybody had a rule. And what I found towards the end of last year is that I felt like I was just constantly on this wheel of, like, content. I'm just putting out content. I'm just, like, putting it out, right? And I'm a very intentional and strategic person. I want people to know that when I show up, when I open my mouth, that I have thought about it, that there's really something for you to listen to, that I'm not just here because everybody says I should be here. And so what I had to do was, like, stop, right? And it was kind of scary because it's like I'm not posting, but I had to stop because it was just too much, right? And it was stealing the joy of all of this. And so I just decided, like, oh, okay, what is it that brings me joy? And the thing that brings me joy is when I watch women who I've helped develop, their talks and their speeches and their presentations and their communication skills, get on stage or show up on social media. And so I've switched, like, kind of switched the funnel for myself, right? Entrepreneurs who are listening who mostly understand funnel. And so now, and I've always wanted to be like a media maven. So I'm going back to then leveraging my podcast and my new newsletter. So my podcast is called Speaking of Speaking, and that's also the newsletter, to use that as a funnel to highlight and show, who I am, what I do, and how I do things differently, right? I've created proprietary frameworks. I've done so many things that differentiate me in this space. And it's time for me to be really visible and vocal about those things and to not hide.
Wow. Kelly, I loved everything that you just said. And I'm trying not to go down these rabbit holes on all the different things that you said. I'm trying to stay focused here, but you really bring a lot to the table. And I'm really excited to hear more about your newsletter, about your podcast, about all the wonderful things that you're doing. And, I have to ask you, Kelly, I have to ask you because this really intrigued me when we met in person. Would you be willing to tell us about your experience putting together events and conferences and how you helped people in that capacity? I think that would really bless people if they heard a little bit about that.
Yeah. So back to all the many things that Kelly has done. I used to own a wedding and event planning company. So this was years ago. And I enjoy planning events. I haven't done as many of them in the last few years, but one that I did recently that I'm so proud of, and it goes back again to really being able to ensure that women's values not erased. I had a mentoring program called Thought Leader Circle. And I started it, where are we now? 20. So it was in 23. So the end of 23, 7 women came into my Thought Leader Circle. And we started in November, like late November. And I was having a conversation with them, like in our orientation session. And I said, hey, y'all want to do a conference? Like, do a conference. And now these women did not have, like, their signature talk. They didn't have anything that they're going on stage. I'm like, listen, I want to do a conference. I know it's November. We're going to do this conference in Women's History Month in March. I was like, we're going to do this in March. I said, you game? Like, are you down for this? They were like, yes. I was like, oh, they're crazy like me. Okay, this is good, right? And so what my sister and I did, we worked with them over the months to develop their signature talks. We had them prepare behind the scenes. I was, developing the conference, getting the location, deciding what the name was. So the name was Iconic Talks, getting all the branding done, doing all the things. So I hosted, produced, and put on this conference, and also developed the speakers who were on the stage, right? And put them on the stage. And so this goes back to what I was saying earlier, Roger. If my mind says that this thing, like I have this thing, I will figure out how to get it done. I will figure
Mm,
out what I need to do and how I need to do it. And it just takes fortitude. It takes resourcefulness to be able to do that. It also takes money. So less, right? And so
let's
it
keep it
wasn't
real.
in it was virtual. So it was live, meaning that the speakers and I were live in a studio in Tampa, and then people watched it virtually. So now we have these two components, right, that we're doing. But if you really want to do something, you can do it. And I love events because they allow you to have like this connection to people that just posting on social media doesn't, right?
Mm,
And I haven't done as many because so, thinking about what people are pouring into your life, right? And how we listen to people and information that we take in and sometimes shouldn't. I took in a lot of information about why I cannot have these live events, right? I don't have enough people on my list. I don't have ad money to spend. You can't do it right now. All the things. And I was looking through my pictures one day and I saw a picture of me when I had my wedding and event planning business. And I had done this thing called bridal boot camp. So I was just like, oh, I'm gonna do bridal boot camp. And at the time, I wasn't even I didn't know what a funnel was. The only thing I knew about was a website. So I had my website. I didn't know what an email list. I didn't know any of this stuff that I know now. And at that time, I had these events. I had a nonprofit for breast cancer. I had huge events that people were at that I wasn't emailing anybody to come to, that I didn't do any ads for,
mm,
right? I just had conversations, right? I got Hilton to give me their ballroom for free to do this boot camp. I had people pay me to be vendors and I was like, where did she go? Right?
mm,
I saw that picture and I said, where did she go? Because she was completely courageous, right? Around
mm,
like, oh, I want to do an event. So I'm just going to start this bridal boot camp and I'm going to do all the things. And right. And I had these events I started my nonprofit for breast cancer and I raised thousands of dollars and I did those events. And there's a trepidation that has crept in, right, from listening to other people, right, who have their own limiting beliefs or have decided that these are the rules. And so I'm trying to break out of that, right, cycle to continue to create my own event. So my goal is to at least have one in-person event this year. And for people who are just have the event. I don't care if it's
mm,
5 people.
mm,
I don't care if it's one person. Like have
mm.
the event and the other thing that I have to my sister reins me in is because I like things. I love things to be beautiful and I love to have all the things. So we go to conferences and she's like, you see, they don't have anything here. You see, they have a table and they gave you a notepad, maybe. And she was like, that's what it's going to be.
Wow.
So that I'm also reining myself in from, to to give an experience, but also to really be financially responsible around it.
Wow. Kelly, this has been phenomenal. I feel like we just got a master class in how to be excellent and how to pursue in the face of adversity, no matter what. I don't care how many hours you have to work. I don't care what your profession is. Get it done. You've really helped us out with that. And this has really touched me a lot. I can't wait to go back and re-listen to this podcast because there were so many nuggets that if I would have been writing things down, I would have been missing things because you were just spitting out just like a machine gun, just boom, boom, boom. And I would like it if we could go into kind of like a machine gun type of round where I ask you some
Okay.
questions and get your feedback. I think this is
All
really going
right.
to bless the person listening to this. So let me ask you this: how has failure shaped your life?
Oh, failure is the best, right? Because it allows you to really sit and think about things. Because the failure, you may think, oh, I'm such no, just like, oh, maybe you weren't supposed to be doing that thing. So failure for me is just lessons. It's lessons and it's life affirming. And it's those signals for you to either stop, turn around, go forward.
That was awesome. Failure is the best. I can't wait to go back and listen. This is gonna be awesome. I'm excited. I'm fired up. Okay. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book is The Go Giver, besides my own books, but one of my favorite books is The Go Giver because that is my life. I am at my core, I am a giver. I am a person who always wants to pour into other people. So that's one of my favorites.
I love that. And this is one of the most important questions. What would you recommend for people to get started on their journey to becoming successfully unemployed? If they're sitting where they're at right now, what's the first thing they should do?
Plan. Make a plan, right? There's so many things out here about like quit your 9 to 5, come out here and be an entrepreneur. Don't do that, right? Make a plan. I had to make a plan because I'll tell you this, and I know this is quick round, but I
Of
want to
course.
share this. When I decided that I wanted to transition and I started doing the things, I started planning, I started building my brand. So that's a very important part, right? Started building my brand. It rubbed my boss the wrong way. It cost me my job. They did not like it, and they tried to stop me, but I knew that I couldn't stop. So that's another thing. So you have to figure out ways, right? Because once you start on this trajectory and it is not what other people see for you or want for you, they're going to try to stop you. So if you're transitioning, one, you need to make a plan, a solid plan, right? And a plan that you know can work. Like I knew that I could speak, right? I knew that I could make money speaking. I had to understand the business of speaking. So that's why I had to get those coaches, right? So because they're already doing it, they knew how to help me in that piece. But I had a plan. I wanted to write the book. I had a plan. I wanted to do the TEDx. I had a plan. And then you have to execute on the plan, right? You have to be intentional. You have to be strategic. You have to be disciplined about it. The thing that I wish that I had done better, really probably done it all, is to make sure that I had enough savings. Because when I started full time as a speaker was 2020. What happened in 2020? Pandemic. Guess where we weren't going? On stages. But I had built my brand in such a way that when George Floyd was murdered in May, that people knew me for as somebody who could do all of these listening sessions for organizations to really help people understand and work through what was going on. So I had built up my brand. So that's why branding is so important. Like if people know you for something, right? And you do that while your job be your investor, right? For this entrepreneurial journey. But don't just like, oh, I'm just gonna quit. I'm just gonna tell these people go to hell, right? And I'm out of here. Don't do that. Don't listen to people telling you that foolishness. Save, make sure you have enough money, right? That can float you. And then also really do your research around what it means to be an entrepreneur. People show you the good side. This shit's hard. It's hard, right? And some days you're just like, why am I doing this? But if you already know, like in your why, like I knew my why, I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. That grounds me and brings me back, even when I'm here in a puddle of tears.
Wow. Thank you. That was just mic drop, boom. I mean, that was phenomenal, Kelly. Seriously, I cannot wait to go back and listen to this podcast because, my listeners know this, but I'm also on that journey of becoming a speaker
Yes.
and, having my own business and still transitioning out of a job as of this moment, as I record this. So hearing these things are reaffirming to me as I take this journey, as I'm building my brand, to tell me this to continue to plan, continue to persevere, continue to move forward. Kelly, this is a random question.
Okay.
This one just popped in my head.
Yeah.
You've done so many wonderful things. I know that you were you won the second place winner of the Women Changing the World Entrepreneur of the Year award. Let me ask you this. Do you also coach men or is it just women exclusively?
Yeah, no, I coach men too. Just generally women flock to me, but I've coached men. I've done to help them with their signature talks. One of my clients actually is just launching out with his new signature talk. So yeah, no, I coach men too. And I coach, because so mentoring I do both. And also in corporations, I'm working with leaders and executives. So yeah, anybody. It's just that I have a soft spot, right? And I'm always thinking about how do I affirm, elevate, and uplift women because I know that, especially in this business, and you're talking about Black and Brown women in this business of professional speaking, we are undervalued. Our expertise is
Mm,
undervalued. And so
mm.
my goal is to help them understand their own value so that they can go out and, command that.
Wow, that is
But yeah,
wonderful.
men, come on in. I help you too.
I had to ask because I didn't want the listener to say, I'm a man. I can't work with
No, I
Kelly.
got you. If you go on my website, you'll see them. They're there.
Well, Kelly, since you brought up your website, anyone that goes on your website is going to be shocked and amazed. I saw big brands on there, eBay, Big Brother and Big Sister of America on there, really huge names. So, Kelly, let me ask you, if people are looking for you, if they want to work with you, where can they get more information about you? What's the name of your podcast? When's it coming out? We need all the sauce, all the tea, all the good information. Share with us, how can we get in touch with Kelly?
Yes, absolutely. So go to the hub, which is kellycharlescollins.com. So everything will be there. If you want to follow me and just get my daily, what I'm talking about, you can follow me on LinkedIn. The podcast is Speaking of Speaking. So speaking is just, with the apostrophe. So it's Speaking of Speaking with a G. It's going to be on YouTube and then also on everywhere that you listen to podcasts. That's coming out March 6th. And then I also have the Speaking of Speaking newsletter, which comes out every Saturday.
Wow. Kelly, this was just a bomb drop. Thank you so much. I'm so excited that we had the opportunity to chat today. This very much encouraged me, and I know it's going to encourage personalists listen to this. Thank you so much for being on the show, Kelly. This was awesome.
You're most welcome. This was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.